Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating period in India's history, a time of incredible religious creativity, where different faiths weren't just living side by side, no, they were actively borrowing from each other, competing, and in the process, transforming one another. Alright, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll set the stage for this era of big change. Then, we'll dig into the fascinating link between power, money, and religion. After that, we'll see a grassroots revolution in belief, check in on the different faiths of Buddhism and Jainism, and finally wrap it all up with the great synthesis that really shaped modern Hinduism.
So first things first, let's get a feel for this period. We're talking about a shared but definitely contested space. This was anything but a static time. It was this vibrant, shifting landscape of belief. And we're zooming in specifically on those 6 centuries between 600 and 1200 CE.
I mean, this period saw a massive wave of change. You got these powerful regional kingdoms popping up, which completely shakes up the dynamics. You also see this huge shift in architecture, a move away from the classic Buddhist stupas to these grand, elaborate temples that would pretty soon dominate the landscape. This was the era that really laid the groundwork for the traditions we still see today.
And what's truly mind-boggling is just how many different traditions were all interacting in this space. You have what we call Puranic Hinduism, focused on big deities like Vishnu and Shiva, and it's competing with, but also coexisting with Buddhism and Jainism. But at the same time, you've got these powerful tantric practices bubbling up, these super personal bhakti devotional movements, and literally countless local and tribal cults. It was a real religious melting pot.
Okay, next up, let's see how religion became, well, a really powerful political tool. This wasn't just about what people believed in their hearts. Politics and religion got deeply, deeply intertwined through this very strategic system we call patronage.
And here's the crucial thing to get about patronage. It was not just charity. Not even close. When a king, say from the Pallava or Chola dynasties, gave a huge chunk of tax-free land to a temple, it was a political masterstroke. It was a brilliant way to project their power, to build infrastructure, and to weave their own authority right into the fabric of society. And this just perfectly illustrates the feedback loop it created. So the king gives land. The temple then becomes this powerful economic and social hub. It brings local people into the kingdom's whole system. And then, in return, the temple gives religious legitimacy right back to the king. You see, power and piety growing together, hand in hand.
But hold on. Religion wasn't just being shaped from the top down by kings and priests. A massive populist transformation, a real revolution of devotion, was bubbling up from the ground, led by these amazing, charismatic poet saints.
This shift was absolutely radical. The Bhakti movement, which was spearheaded by poet saints like the Alvars, who worshipped Vishnu, and the Nayanars, who worshipped Shiva, basically rejected the complicated Sanskrit-heavy rituals of traditional Brahmanism. What did they champion instead? A passionate, personal, emotional love for a deity. And they expressed it not in some elite, ancient language, but in the everyday languages of the people, like Tamil. And this is exactly why it was so revolutionary. This quote just nails it. The movement's incredible inclusivity, it just smashed right through those rigid caste barriers. It offered a direct line to the divine for absolutely everyone, no matter their social status, no matter their gender. It was a true democratization of faith.
Okay, so with this temple-based Hinduism and this new Bhakti movement on the rise, you have to ask, what happened to the other big players on the field? Let's take a look at the very, very different paths that Buddhism and Jainism took. I mean, their fates could not have been more different. It's like 2 completely separate stories. And it all comes down to that one key thing we've been talking about, patronage. As Buddhism started losing favor with the kings and the rulers, its institutions got weaker and weaker. But Jainism, especially down in the Deccan region, it thrived. Why? Because it built these super strong alliances with kings, with military generals, and with wealthy merchants who poured money into its growth.
And if you want a symbol of Jainism's success, this is it. 57 feet. Just let that sink in. That's how tall the colossal statue of Bahubali is at Shravanbelagola. It's a marvel, carved from a single piece of rock, and it was commissioned by a powerful general. This wasn't just a religious statue. It was a monumental statement of Jainism's power, its influence, and its permanence.
And all of this brings us to the great religious synthesis. This is maybe the most defining feature of this entire era. the incredible, almost magical way that Puranic Hinduism grew by absorbing and integrating other beliefs right into its own system. The core idea was this: absorption, not erasure. Instead of trying to just stamp out all the local and tribal traditions, the growing Hindu framework simply wove them in. It found a place for their gods, their myths, and their rituals within its own ever-expanding tapestry.
And you can see this process in action right here. It's just amazing. A local tribal god in Odisha gets transformed into Jagannath, who is a form of Vishnu. Countless village goddesses all across the subcontinent are reinterpreted as different forms of the one great Devi. And then, in what has to be the ultimate act of synthesis, even the Buddha, the founder of a totally rival tradition, is brought into the fold as just another incarnation of Vishnu.
So, when you pull it all together, the story of this period isn't one of simple conquest. It's way more complex. It's a dynamic blend of royal patronage, populist devotion, and religious absorption. This legacy, which was forged over 1,000 years ago, created this uniquely diverse and layered spiritual landscape that really continues to define the subcontinent, and it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about.